The confirmation today that Kevin Rudd is leaving the post as US ambassador by the end of March. Don't yet know who will replace him. For more, I'm joined by Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, let's start with the reaction to Rudd's departure. It's a year ahead of when it was meant to be, but the Prime Minister insists Kevin Rudd wasn't pushed.
Oh, well, look, I think the fact he's leaving a year early from a post as important as that raises more questions than it does give answers. But let's get back to first principle. For Anthony Albanese to have appointed Kevin Rudd to the US ambassadorship was a mistake at the very beginning, after he'd made those disparaging comments about President Trump, who wasn't the president yet, but was clearly going to be a presidential candidate, and to still appoint him to a key ally is one that I think showed diplomatic naivety at the start of this whole appointment of Kevin Rudd. And I think that there has been some successes over there, but that's been despite Kevin Rudd. You look at the critical minerals deal that came about and was laid in our lap when China put an export ban on their critical minerals. Of course, the United States and other allies were going to look to us because we sit on the periodical table. So, look. This is quite interesting that Kevin Rudd's gone, and it is important that Anthony Albanese doesn't make the same mistake in the next appointment in making sure that, the first rule of anybody that wants to be a diplomat is never to make critical assessment of other world leaders, particularly those in democratic ones, particularly if you want to be an ambassador at some point in the future. And Kevin Rudd, who has diplomatic experience, and so too the long experience of the Prime Minister, to have made that appointment to start with was a huge mistake.
I wonder who you think who should be in the mix to replace Kevin Rudd. This morning, the PM was asked about whether Scott Morrison, as a former PM, would be a good appointment. He didn't say one way or another. The other name that I'm thinking of is Malcolm Turnbull. They worked together when he was PM. He knows Trump well. What would you think if he was someone in the mix?
Well, look, I think what we need to do is have somebody that can not just work with the Trump administration, but with future administrations, whether that be a future Republican or Democratic administration, and that we don't send somebody that's made disparaging comments about the current president or future potential presidents. That's about making sure that we respect their sovereignty, so we'd expect them to respect ours about making commentary about our leaders here in Australia. That's how a democratic society works globally. We broke that by sending Kevin Rudd there. And as I say, it was diplomatic naivety to think that we could just take a punt and hope Trump didn't get elected to send Rudd there, despite the disparaging comments of both him and the Prime Minister previous. So it was arrogance to send him there to start with, but it's important now that we get it right, because our relationship with the United States is critical in not just a trade sense, but in a strategic geopolitical sense, in our national security.
I wanted to turn to Parliament's return. It'll be here next Monday and Tuesday. The Prime Minister is bundling together the gun reforms. I know you've got significant concerns there, and the hate speech changes in one piece of legislation. This means you and the Nationals will have to make a choice about whether you back the entire thing. You're not going to be able to pick one or another. What's your reaction?
Well, this is not about trying to bring the country together in a bipartisan way. This is pure, petty, puerile university politics by the Prime Minister. He's angry. He's angry with Australians that they forced him into a Royal Commission. So what he's done is reverted to type of that university politics. It's just petty. The legislation around hate speech is complex, as is gun laws. And the reality is to try and put them into one bill disrespects the Parliament and actually flies in the face of his words about bringing the Parliament together in a cooperative way. The reality is if you were really serious about bringing the country together and bringing the Parliament together, you would have these two serious and complex policy areas separated. The reality is that it's 500 odd pages. We only got it last night. We're still working through it. But even when you look at elements like gun buybacks, he hasn't even got the states on side. The Northern Territory's told him to go away. Tasmania basically aren't interested. Queensland doesn't look to be changing any of their laws. And Western Australia has already changed their laws. The reality is this is more about a diversion, about politics than about good policy. We don't have a gun problem in this country. We have an extreme Islamic ideological problem in this country, one in which they have ignored for 2.5 years. And the warning signs were there, and this government is trying trying to look for whatever diversion and whatever part of petty politics they can play to walk away rather than doing what's right for Australians.
But David, if it comes down to it, are you and the Nationals willing to oppose this total package because of the concerns you have on guns? Are you saying that that's a live option?
Well, that'll be a determination by my party room. I don't make captain's calls, but what we will do is we're looking at the legislation right now, or we only got it last night. We'll work through it and we'll obviously be constructive where we can, but my party room will make that determination. We fiercely respect our sovereignty to be able to make those decisions as a party room and as a collective, and that's when we make better decisions, whether it was like the Voice or whether it was about net zero, abolishing that. When you draw on the collective wisdom of the National Party room, you take some common sense to Canberra, and I'll work through that once we've got a line of sight and the details of the legislation, because invariably anything that Labor Party touches, and particularly Anthony Albanese, there will be booby traps and traps all through this around petty politics, playing university-style politics here in Australia rather than doing what's right. And if Anthony Albanese really wants to bring this country together, because he's divided it from the start with the Voice and now with his handling of a Royal Commission. If he was really serious and he wanted to be a real leader with courage and conviction, he wouldn't try and play politics in Parliament next week. He'd separate these bills. But that's a reflection on him, the leader he is, and the type of leader that he has become as leading this nation in dividing it rather than bringing it together. But we'll continue to be the adults in the room as Nationals, but we have strong principles about respecting the rights of not just farmers, but also understand, don't just stereotype gun owners in capital cities as people who shouldn't own guns. They do much of the heavy lifting in pest mitigation for farmers. Farmers don't have the time nor the energy or the inclination to go out at night and get rid of wild pigs and deers and dogs. They rely on recreational hunters to do the heavy lifting for them. So we don't have a gun problem. We've got an extreme Islamic problem in this country. That's what we should be focused on, not spending $1 billion on something that'll take away guns from lawful gun owners where the states don't even agree with him. And so it's all becoming a bit of a moot point.
Nationals leader David Littleproud, we'll see you here in Canberra in a week's time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.